Hello and welcome to IAMC TV Radio. Today, let's explore the top news headlines for January 2nd, 2025. We've got a mix of international and African news, so let's jump right in.
Sounds good.
First up, a shooting incident outside the Amazura nightclub in Queens. New York left 11 people injured. Thankfully, none of the injuries appear to be life-threatening, but this comes just after that horrific attack in New Orleans, so people are understandably on edge. It makes you wonder what cities are doing to increase security in public spaces.
It's definitely a concerning trend, and this latest shooting is likely to reignite debates about gun control in the U.S. On a different note, there's a social media storm brewing on platform X, formerly Twitter.
What's happening there?
Well, high-profile figures like Elon Musk and J.K. Rowling are criticizing the UK's handling of child sex abuse rings, specifically bringing up the Rotherham scandal. For those who might not be familiar, this scandal involved the sexual exploitation of at least 1,400 children in Rotherham, England, between 1997 and 2013, and authorities were accused of failing to act due to political correctness and fear of being labeled racist. 7 men connected to this horrific case were recently sentenced, which has brought the entire issue back into the spotlight.
That's a really heavy topic.
Yeah.
And it's bound to spark strong opinions on all sides.
Absolutely. Shifting gears now to the Democratic Republic of Congo. A military tribunal sentenced 13 soldiers to death for crimes like murder, looting, and even cowardice. This is part of a larger effort to address indiscipline within the Congolese army, which is currently engaged in a conflict with the M23 rebel group.
So it seems like they're trying to tackle issues on multiple fronts, both internally and on the battlefield.
Exactly. But there is some good news coming out of Africa as well. Senegal and Mauritania just opened the first well at their shared offshore gas field. This is a major step towards gas production, which has huge economic potential for Senegal, especially since they only recently became an oil-producing nation in 2024.
That's fantastic.
Yep.
This could really boost their economy, and maybe even help stabilize the region. What else is happening in Africa?
Well, Thailand has introduced a new e-visa system for citizens of several African countries, including Nigeria, Ghana, and Cameroon. The goal is to simplify the visa application process, but it means applicants now have to navigate a new online system.
So it's a double-edged sword, right? It could make things easier for some, but also present new challenges for those who might not be as tech-savvy or have reliable internet access.
Precisely. And speaking of challenges, a disturbing case has emerged from Kano State, Nigeria. An elderly man named Malam Yahaya was arrested for allegedly hypnotizing a young man, Kabir Sani, to kidnap a baby for some kind of ritualistic purpose.
Wait, hypnotizing him? That's incredibly creepy. Is there any evidence to support this claim?
Well, according to Sahara reporters, Sani claims he was completely under Yahaya's control, unable to resist his commands. He even led the police to Yahaya's house, where they found disturbing items. Obviously, the police are investigating, but if true, this raises serious questions about the power of suggestion and how vulnerable people can be exploited.
Wow, that's a truly unsettling story. It's a reminder that even in the modern world, there are still deeply rooted beliefs and practices that can seem shocking or even incomprehensible to outsiders.
Absolutely. Now, there was also a rather chaotic incident at Abuja airport. A French passenger was removed from multiple flights due to disruptive behavior, causing quite a stir.
What led to this? Do we know?
Apparently, this passenger didn't have a Nigerian visa and was denied entry into Abuja. But he was also refused boarding on subsequent flights, leading to a standoff with the authorities. The whole thing played out on social media with the Director of Public Affairs and Consumer Protection at the Nigeria Civil Aviation Authority, Michael Akimugu, giving real-time updates on his X account.
That's interesting. So this seemingly isolated event actually reveals a larger issue of how airlines handle disruptive passengers, especially in situations with potential diplomatic ramifications.
Exactly. And to round out our African news, there's a tragic incident from Imo State, Nigeria, where a Catholic priest was arrested for allegedly shooting and killing a young boy during a New Year's Eve mass.
Oh no, what happened?
According to reports, the boy was using fireworks. And the priest questions about the use of force, especially within a religious setting.
It's an incredibly disturbing incident. It challenges our assumptions about safe spaces and the behavior expected from those in positions of authority. Hopefully the investigation will shed more light on what actually transpired.
Agreed. And it certainly highlights the complexities of life in Africa, where you see everything from technological advancements to deeply rooted traditions, and unfortunately, sometimes violence and tragedy.
It's a potent reminder that even as we strive for progress and development, we must also confront the darker sides of human nature and work to create a more just and equitable world.
It's a reminder that progress doesn't always move in a straight line. Speaking of which, that incident at the Abuja airport with the French passenger, it wasn't just about one disruptive person.
You're right. It exposed a gap in how airlines and authorities deal with passengers who are denied entry into a country. What happens to them? Where do they go?
Exactly. According to Michael Akimugu's posts on X, the passenger was deemed a safety risk, but without a Nigerian visa, he couldn't legally enter the country. And airlines are understandably reluctant to fly someone back to a place where they might face legal trouble or persecution.
So he was caught in this bureaucratic limbo, stuck at the airport. It's a situation that could happen more and more as international travel increases and immigration policies become stricter.
It certainly highlights the need for clearer protocols and maybe even better communication between airlines and immigration authorities to avoid these kinds of situations in the future. Now, switching gears completely, let's talk about that bizarre case in Kano State, with the elderly man accused of hypnotizing a young man to kidnap a baby.
That story really stuck with me. It's hard to grasp, especially for those of us who don't come from a culture where beliefs in hypnotism or ritualistic practices are prevalent.
It's definitely a case that pushes the boundaries of what many consider rational or believable, but it also forces us to confront the fact that different cultures have different belief systems, some of which might seem strange or even dangerous to outsiders.
And even if we might not understand or agree with those beliefs, we have to acknowledge that they exist and try to understand the context in which they operate.
Precisely. And this case also raises questions about how we define consent, especially when someone claims to be under the influence of another person. If Sani truly believed he was powerless to resist Yahaya's commands, can we hold him fully responsible for his actions?
That's a really complex legal and ethical dilemma. It's a reminder that not all crimes fit neatly into our predefined categories, and sometimes the lines between victim and perpetrator can be blurred.
Indeed. Now let's move on to a different aspect of global interaction, Thailand's new e-visa system for citizens of several African countries. On the surface, it seems like a positive step towards making travel easier, but there's another side to this story, isn't there?
Absolutely. While it eliminates the need for physical paperwork and in-person appointments, it also presumes a level of digital literacy and access that might not be universal, especially in developing countries.
Exactly. Imagine someone in a rural village trying to apply for this e-visa. Do they have reliable internet access? Can they navigate a potentially complex online system? What happens if there are technical glitches or delays?
These are all valid concerns. It highlights how technological advancements, while intended to make things easier, can inadvertently create barriers for those who are already marginalized or lack access to resources.
And it underscores the importance of digital inclusion efforts, making sure everyone has the skills and resources to participate in an increasingly digital world. Now, from digital inclusion to a grave violation of trust, let's talk about that priest in Imo State who allegedly shot a young boy during a New Year's Eve Mass.
This incident is just heartbreaking. It's hard to comprehend how a religious service, a place meant to be a sanctuary, could become the scene of such a senseless tragedy.
It shatters our assumptions about safe spaces and raises questions about how someone in a position of spiritual authority could resort to such violence.
And the fact that it happened during a celebration, a time when people are supposed to be filled with hope and joy, makes it even more tragic.
It's a stark reminder that violence can erupt anywhere, at any time, and that even those we entrust with our spiritual well-being are capable of profound harm.
This incident demands a thorough investigation, not just to determine the facts of what happened, but also to address any underlying issues within the church or the community that might have contributed to this tragedy.
Agreed. Now let's shift our focus back to the international stage and examine the aftermath of the shooting in Queens, New York.
While we're thankful that there were no fatalities, this incident so soon after the devastating attack in New Orleans has understandably reignited concerns about gun violence in the U.S.
It's tragically becoming a recurring theme. Each mass shooting sparks a new round of debates about gun control. But meaningful action seems elusive. It's a complex issue with deep roots in American culture and politics. There's no easy solution. But it's crucial to keep pushing for meaningful dialogue and exploring every possible avenue for prevention and intervention.
It's a conversation that needs to happen at all levels, from individual communities to the highest levels of government. Speaking of complex issues, the online debate about the UK's handling of child sex abuse rings continues to rage on Platform X.
It's a topic that's incredibly difficult to discuss, but the recent sentencing of those men involved in the Rotherham scandal has ripped the bandage off a very deep wound.
It's a stark reminder that even in developed countries with robust social systems, horrific abuse can happen, and often. The most vulnerable members of society are the ones who suffer in silence.
And the Rotherham case, specifically, brought to light the issue of authorities failing to act, sometimes out of fear of appearing racist or politically incorrect. This has eroded public trust and fueled a sense of outrage, which is reflected in the heated online discussions.
It's clear that there's a lot of anger and frustration directed at those who are supposed to protect these children, but failed to do so, and rightfully so. This case has exposed systemic failures that need to be addressed to prevent something like this from happening again.
Absolutely. Accountability is crucial. But so is a commitment to understanding the underlying factors that contribute to these horrific crimes and developing effective prevention strategies.
It's a multifaceted problem that requires a multifaceted approach.
Now let's end our exploration of today's headlines on a more positive note. The opening of the first Daza well at the shared offshore field between Senegal and Mauritania is a significant development. It represents a major step towards energy independence and economic growth, particularly for Senegal, which has only recently joined the ranks of oil-producing nations. This could have a ripple effect throughout the region.
It's a beacon of hope, a sign that progress is possible, even amidst all the challenges and turmoil we see in the world.
It's a reminder that positive change can happen, sometimes in unexpected places.
Thank you for listening to today's top news headlines on IAMC TV Radio.